In the golden age of piracy, when the seas of the Caribbean were ruled by men who cared little for law or crown, one pirate rose to infamy not because of his might, nor because of his genius as a sailor, but because of his daring audacity and the company he kept. His name was John Rackham, though history remembers him better as Calico Jack, a pirate whose legacy would be forever tied to a single flag and two infamous women. Calico Jack was not born to greatness. He entered the world in 1682, somewhere in England, though the records of his childhood are long lost to time. What we do know is that by his 20s, Rackham had made his way to the New World, lured by promises of fortune and freedom on the high seas. He earned his living at first not as a captain, but as a quartermaster aboard the pirate ship Ranger, which sailed under the command of Charles Vane, one of the most feared buccaneers of his day. Jack Rackham was not known for his swordsmanship or his navigational skills. In fact, he was considered quite ordinary in those departments. But where he lacked in martial ability, he more than made up for it in cunning, charisma, and a dangerous gift for persuasion. These were the tools that would one day make him a captain. In 1718, the Ranger was returning from a long and brutal pirate raid. Supplies were running low, the men were tired, and the ship was in poor condition. That was when they encountered a French warship, twice their size, bristling with cannons and heavy with treasure. The crew begged Charles Vane to attack, convinced they could claim unimaginable riches, but Vane was a seasoned commander. He knew the risks of facing such a ship with their weakened vessel and ragged men. He refused. Instead, he ordered a retreat. This decision infuriated the crew, who felt cheated of glory. And it was then that John Rackham saw his chance. He whispered to the men, feeding their greed. He told them that Vane was a coward, that they had lost their chance at treasure because of poor leadership. He painted a picture of what could have been. Riches beyond measure, a ship powerful enough to make them kings of the sea. It was nonsense, of course, but the desperate and hungry crew believed him. Soon, more than 2/3 of the men rallied behind Rackham. Vane was denounced, stripped of his command, and cast adrift with those still loyal to him. And so, without a single battle, Calico Jack became captain of the Ranger. Why Calico? It was because of his flamboyant taste in clothing. He favored bright calico jackets, a style far removed from the rugged leathers and dark coats of his fellow pirates. It was this fashion that earned him his lasting nickname. A pirate's career as captain, Calico Jack was bold, but he was also reckless. His early successes included the capture of the Kingston, a large merchant vessel loaded with loot. But Rackham's triumph quickly turned into disaster. He seized the ship within sight of Port Royal Harbor, the very heart of anti-pirate activity in the Caribbean. Every merchant, every sailor, every watchman saw his theft. Outraged, the merchants of Jamaica organized a hunting expedition. They armed a ship with bounty hunters and furious volunteers determined to rid the seas of Rackham. For 2 months, they pursued him relentlessly, until they finally tracked him to the coast of Cuba. Rackham and his crew barely escaped. Their prize, the Kingston, was retaken, and with it all the treasure they had risked so much to seize. But Jack, ever the opportunist, devised a plan. Under the cover of night, his men rowed to an English sloop anchored nearby, overpowered its guards, and stole the vessel. With this new ship, Rackham and his pirates once again slipped away into the Caribbean darkness. It was a temporary victory, but Rackham knew the tide was turning against pirates. The once golden age of piracy was beginning to decline. Nations were cracking down and pardons were being offered to those who would surrender. So Jack made a calculated choice. He sailed to the Bahamas and threw himself at the mercy of Governor Woodes Rogers, a man who had made it his mission to wipe out piracy. Jack claimed that he had been forced into the life by Charles Vane, insisting he was merely an unwilling participant. Rogers, though likely unconvinced, had his own reasons to accept the plea. He despised Vane and welcomed the chance to strip him of allies. Thus, John Rackham received a king's pardon, on the condition that if he returned to piracy, he would hang. Anne Bonny, it was during this time in Nassau that Calico Jack's fate took a dramatic turn. There he met Anne Bonny, the fiery red-haired daughter of an Irish planter. Anne was already married to a sailor named James Bonny, who happened to serve as an informer for Governor Rogers. But Anne was no ordinary woman. She despised her husband's cowardice and yearned for adventure. Rackham and Anne fell quickly, passionately and dangerously in love. Their affair was discovered, and James Bonney demanded punishment for Anne, imprisonment and public whipping. To save her, Rackham offered James money for a divorce, but James refused. So Jack chose the only path he knew. He broke his pardon, stole a ship, and fled Nassau with Anne Bonney by his side. In doing so, he sealed his fate. The Jolly Roger. It was during this period that Rackham designed the flag that would become the most iconic symbol of piracy, a black banner with a white skull and two crossed cutlasses beneath it. Though it was not the first pirate flag, it became the most recognizable, and today it is synonymous with the very idea of piracy. With Anne at his side, Rackham returned to plundering small merchant ships across the Caribbean. Their raids were modest, never as grand as Blackbeard's or Bartholomew Roberts, but they created chaos nonetheless. Anne proved herself as fierce as any man, and soon another woman, Mary Red, joined their crew, disguised as a man. Together, the two women struck terror into their enemies, fighting side by side with Rackham. The fall by 1720, Governor Rogers had grown tired of Rackham's antics. He branded him, Anne Bonney, and Mary Red as wanted criminals. Pirate hunter Jonathan Barnett was dispatched to bring them down. Barnett found Rackham anchored at Dry Harbor Bay, Jamaica. The pirates had just finished celebrating a raid and were deep in drink. When Barnett's ship stormed in, most of Rackham's men were too drunk to fight. In fact, it was said that only Anne Bonney and Mary Red put up any real resistance, rallying a handful of sober crewmen in a brief melee. But the fight was hopeless. The pirates were captured with little effort. Rackham and his men were taken to Jamaica, where they were swiftly tried and condemned. On 18th November 1720, Calico Jack Rackham was hanged at Port Royal. His body was gibbeted, hung in an iron cage by the harbor, as a warning to all who dreamed of piracy. Anne Bonney, furious and heartbroken, is said to have visited him before his execution. Her final words cut deeper than any blade. "Had you fought like a man, you would not have been hanged like a dog." The rest of Rackham's crew met similar fates. Though Anne Bonney and Mary Red escaped the noose, Mary died in prison, but Anne's fate remains a mystery. Some say her wealthy father secured her release. Others whisper that she escaped and lived under a new name. Legacy. So why does history still remember Calico Jack? He was not a great fighter nor a brilliant navigator. He captured few great prizes and left no lasting empire on the seas. And yet, his story lives on. Perhaps it is because he gave the world the pirate flag we all know today, the skull and crossed swords. Or perhaps it is because of Anne Bonney and Mary Read, two women who defied the world and carved their names into the legends of piracy alongside him. Calico Jack Rackham may